Today, I'm going over the section in chapter 2 called Fear and Conflict. It starts off saying, being afraid seems to be involuntary, something beyond your own control. Yet, I have already said that only constructive acts should be done involuntary. So, this is Jesus talking to us, telling us that my control can take over everything that does not matter, while my guidance can direct everything that does, if you so choose. Fear cannot be controlled by me, but it can be self controlled. Okay. We have the power to control our fear. Fear prevents me from giving you my control. When we are in fear, that prevents us from giving our power over to the Christ part of our mind, over to Jesus. The presence of fear shows that you have raised body thoughts to the level of the mind. This removes them from my control and makes you feel personally responsible for them. This is an obvious confusion of levels. Okay? So, this level confusion that we're having every day, every moment that we appear to be here, except when we're having those holy instances, when we are remembering to forgive and when we are having our holy instant miracles. But other than those moments where we remember the truth, we are constantly in level confusion. And so, what Jesus is telling us here is that because we are not using our mind to choose correctly and we're just letting the mind take over, this induces fear. And as long as we feel that fear, we continuously run away from our guilt, from our power to choose, and we bury our head in the sand. And then we can't let Jesus take control of our mind. That's what he's telling us. So, this section has 9 paragraphs. All right. There's a lot to cover, but really, I can very easily simplify it down to what he's telling us in this section is that we are confused about levels. We get scared. We use projection to deal with our unconscious guilt that we are constantly feeling. We don't know why we feel uncomfortable and afraid. So we just keep running and we just keep projecting and we just keep denying. We keep denying our right-minded thoughts. So what Jesus is telling us in this section is that when we understand that we are allowing this to happen and that we actually have the power to choose, we can choose to not listen to the ego. We can choose to give our mind to Jesus. This is the same as choosing our right-minded thoughts. We are Jesus. It is the Christ part of our mind, our Christ consciousness that we can give our mind to. And then it will lead us in the right direction. It will tell us all the things we need to know. It will support us in the truth as we move through our lives. So that's the basic gist of what this section is going to be telling us. But I don't want to butcher Jesus's words, so let's break it down a little bit. So paragraph 2 says that Jesus is saying, I don't foster level confusion, but you must choose to correct it. That's our choice, right? He's not going to just do it for us if we don't give our power to him to do it for us. We have to make that choice. We have to choose to hand things over to Jesus or the right part of our mind. He says to us, why should you condone insane thinking? Jesus is like, hello, why are you doing this? Why would you do that? There is a confusion here that you would do well to look at clearly, he says. He's very politely trying to say, wake up, dumbass. Look at what you're doing. Try to look at it clearly. You may believe that you are responsible for what you do, but not for what you think. The truth is that you are responsible for what you think, Jesus is telling us, because it is only at this level that you can exercise choice. What you do comes from what you think. You cannot separate yourself from the truth by giving autonomy to behavior. Okay, so people can't just say, oh, I can't help it. I don't know why I act this way. I don't know why I'm doing this. I can't help it. Jesus is saying, no, no, you can't make excuses like that. Everything you do is coming from what you think, he's telling us. This is controlled by me automatically as soon as you place what you think under my guidance. So he's telling us, give your thoughts to me. Give your thoughts to your Christ mind. Give your thoughts to your right mind. And if you don't feel comfortable thinking of it as yourself, then use the imaginary character of Jesus temporarily until you're ready to understand that you are Jesus. Whenever you are afraid, it is a sure sign that you have allowed your mind to miscreate and have not allowed me to guide it. All right. He's going to continue to give messages like this throughout this section over and over, telling us every time you feel fear, it's because you forgot who you really are. It's because you forgot the truth. And when you're able to catch yourself in those moments, you can choose to change your mind. You can choose to change which teacher you're listening to. You can make those choices. In fact, Jesus wants us to make that choice. He's encouraging us to make that choice. Paragraph 3, he's telling us you must change your mind, not your behavior. He's saying that it has nothing to do with your behavior and everything to do with your thoughts, your mind. So if people in the world are thinking that by going out into the world and acting a certain way, behaving a certain way, that this means that they're doing God's work or that they are in alignment with Jesus. But he's going to continue to explain that no matter what you're doing, if your mind isn't in right-minded thoughts, if your mind isn't being guided by Christ consciousness, you have chosen incorrectly. It doesn't even matter how you're behaving. All that matters are your thoughts, your mind, what's going on with your mind. He says you must change your mind, not your behavior. And this is a matter of willingness. So we have to be willing. We have to be willing to change our mind. He says you don't need guidance except at the mind level. That's it. We don't need to worry about changing our behavior. We need to be concerned about changing our mind. Correction belongs only at the level where change is possible. Change does not mean anything at the symptom level where it cannot work. Right? Those are fancy words that mean your behavior means nothing. It doesn't matter what's happening at the level of form. That's not what Jesus cares about. That's not what our right mind cares about. What our right mind cares about is that we are in our right mind, having right-minded thoughts and choosing the correct teacher. Then whatever behaviors come out of that is what is meant to be. That is when we are in alignment with spirit, with our Christ self. We don't need to worry about our behaviors, okay? We don't want to be barking up the wrong tree and wasting our time and energy in the world of form. That's not where the problem is. It's in the mind. Paragraph 4 says the correction of fear is your responsibility. Okay? We are responsible for choosing our right mind. Okay, so then he's telling us not to bother asking him for help with like things of form in our life. Don't bother. He says that you're barking up the wrong tree. Ask me, meaning Jesus, our Christ consciousness, the right part of our mind, ask me to release you from your wrong-minded thoughts, not from the things that appear to be happening in your dream life. And he says, okay, here comes the famous line. You are much too tolerant of mind wandering, he says, and you are passively condoning your mind's miscreations. So whenever we are not taking the time to choose correctly, whenever we are not taking the time to notice that we are having wrong-minded thoughts and then make a different choice to choose again, when we are doing that, we are wasting time, we are not accepting the truth of who we are, and we are not utilizing the tool of Jesus. What he's telling us here is that I am here to help you. And the way that I can help you is when you give your mind, the way your mind works, over to me, meaning us, our Christ consciousness. There's only one of us. And so the only problem is that we allow our minds to wander We are very tolerant of this because we don't even think about it. We're so used to it. And we are passively condoning our mind's miscreations, meaning we continue the psycho dream. We continue this illusory world. The particular result does not matter, but the fundamental error does. All right. What's happening in form in the world doesn't matter, but what you're choosing with your mind does. The correction is always the same. Before you choose to do anything, ask me, Jesus, if your choice is in accord with mine. If you are sure that it is, there will be no fear. Okay, so this is when we put our butts in the inner tube and we just go with the flow and the current of God, of Holy Spirit, of source creation, of the truth of who we really are. When we do that and we go with the flow of our true essence of who we are, then we are automatically in alignment with Christ, in alignment with our right mind. And then whatever we say or do is the right thing. Okay? When we listen to our right minded thoughts, we are always in the right place, doing the right thing, saying the right thing, and so on. There will be no fear because we completely trust in those moments. We know we are safe with Spirit. Paragraph 5 says, fear is always a sign of strain arising whenever you want conflicts with what you do. All right. This is how we're almost always living, is in strain. And the reason we are strained is because we are going against the current. Instead of being in our inner tube and just going with the flow of Spirit, where Spirit takes us, we are trying to move our inner tube the way we want it to go. We're trying to control it with our ego thought system. And that is where the strain comes from. That is where the difficulty comes from. So then he's talking about these two mistakes that we make. Mistake number one is choosing our wrong mind and not even realizing we're doing it, not even realizing or understanding what we're doing, how we're doing it, or that anything's even happening. The second mistake is when we try to correct our behavior. We try to correct the way we act in the world of form. These are the two mistakes he's saying that we make. We're focusing on the wrong thing, the wrong place. In the first step, we're not even focusing at all. We're just mindlessly letting the ego take over. And in the second step, he's talking about how we try to change the world of form and how that's not going to fix anything. And he says, in both cases, the mind and the behavior are out of accord, resulting in a situation in which you are doing what you do not wholly want to. This arouses a sense of coercion that usually produces rage, and projection is likely to follow. So, whenever there's fear, it is because you have not made up your mind. Your mind is therefore split, and your behavior inevitably becomes erratic. Okay, so he's telling a little story about what we do when we are in alignment with our ego thought system. He's explaining very kindly how insane we are and how we're just being lazy and we're just letting the ego take over. And therefore, we live these crazy lives in this crazy world of duality with all these very drastic ups and downs. And he's telling us this is all a mistake that has been made in our mind. And he's telling us that these mistakes are made out of fear. We have many, many, many fears, and we are mindlessly, unconsciously making all sorts of choices based upon this fear that we're not even aware that we have. So that's why he's pointing it out to us, so we can understand that. And that's why he says your mind is therefore split and your behavior inevitably becomes erratic. So anyone who is in alignment with the ego thought system and who is acting out of ego and believing in the world of form and thinking that the things that they do here in the world of form matter, are important, are changing something, are creating something, right? This is all erratic behavior. This is all us being very confused and not understanding our truth. And that's why it's erratic behavior, because in the world of duality, things are erratic, right? Up, down, back, forth. It's crazy. But that's not what spirit is. That's not what God is. And that's not our true essence. And that's why we experience difficulty and pain when we think we are here in the world of form. Paragraph 6 says, there is no strain in doing God's will as soon as you recognize that it is also your own. Okay. So all this running away and fear of coercion and all this stuff, those are all ego reactions. But as we practice forgiveness and as we experience miracles over and over and over again, we start to become more acclimated to spirit. We start to become more in alignment with our right mind, with our Christ consciousness. And then we begin to exist and act out of that frequency. And that changes everything. And then we can release the fear and we don't feel like we have to keep controlling things. And that's how it's no longer erratic, because it is consistent and steady. It's not going to appear that way in this world of form where we have duality, but you will feel that way inside. That's peace. That's what you're looking for. That's what we're all looking for. He tells us the lesson here is quite simple, but particularly likely to be overlooked. Right? Because the course is very simple, it's just not easy. And he's acknowledging that here. We tend to overlook it because we don't want to know. We don't want to know these truths. He says, I will therefore repeat it. Since we're such bad learners and we don't want to listen, he's going to repeat it for us. And he says, urging you to listen. Only your mind can produce fear. It does so whenever it is conflicted in what it wants, meaning right-minded thoughts or wrong-minded thoughts. Which way are you going to go? So when our mind is conflicted, it says it is producing inevitable strain because wanting and doing are discordant. This can be corrected only by accepting a unified goal. All right. So only by giving up our ego thought system, giving up all of our wants and desires of this world, thinking it's real, thinking we're actually doing something and accomplishing something here. When we give that up and we give our mind to Jesus, we will go where we really want to go. All right. We are discordant because we keep trying to make it work in this world of form. And that's not what our true self wants. Our true self wants to be in alignment with God. And so that is our unified goal. That's what we are all trying to accept, is that we are one with one another and that we are one with God. Paragraph 7 says, the first corrective step in undoing the error is to know first that the conflict is an expression of fear. All right, he's repeating the same message all throughout this section. We are afraid. Everything in this world that feels difficult or uncomfortable to us or upsetting to us in any way is all coming from our fear, which stems from our belief in the ego thought system. Say to yourself that you must somehow have chosen not to love, or the fear could not have arisen. Then the whole process of correction becomes nothing more than a series of pragmatic steps in the larger process of accepting the atonement as the remedy. All right, all fancy words for saying he's about to give us these steps, that this is the way to go home to God. Okay, step 1, know first that this is fear. Step 2, fear arises from lack of love. Step 3, the only remedy for lack of love is perfect love. Step 4, perfect love is the atonement. All right, very simple. It's all very simple, but it is not easy because our egos fight this tooth and nail every step of the way. So these 4 steps give us a possible tool that we can use if we find ourselves in a fearful place. So first, we want to observe ourselves and know, wait a minute, I don't feel good. Wait, what's going on here? Oh, I'm feeling fear. Okay, that's step 1. Step 2, know that that fear is false and it's coming from a lack of love. That's where the fear came from. Step 3, the only remedy for lack of love is perfect love. Okay, the only way to release this feeling of having a lack of love is to accept God's love, which is the atonement. And that's step 4. When we accept God's love, when we remove the obstacles that are blocking God's love, that are blocking us from experiencing God's love, then we have reached the atonement. We have undone the ego thought system. That's what the atonement is. That's the fourth step. So those are four very simple steps to tell you to go home to God. It's not the only way. These four steps aren't the only process you can put your mind through to try to get there, but it's one of many, many thought processes that are offered in the course. Okay, paragraph 8 says, I have emphasized that the miracle or the expression of atonement is always a sign of respect from the worthy to the worthy. Okay, that's a fancy way of explaining what practicing forgiveness means. When we look at others and we know that they are just spirit, just like us, when we know that we are all just love, that we are all one with one another and God, that is the worthy to the worthy. It says, it is obvious. Again, he loves telling us how obvious this is. Thank you, Jesus. It is obvious, he says, then that when you are afraid, you have placed yourself in a position where you need atonement. Okay, when we're afraid, we're using the wrong part of our mind, and we need atonement to undo that wrong part of our mind so that we can only hear and experience and feel the right part of our mind. As long as you recognize only the need for the remedy, you will remain fearful. Meaning, if we feel lost in this world and we feel like, I don't know why I do these things that I do, I can't help it, I can't control it, or you think that the ego has power over you, or you think other egos have power over you, what he's saying is as long as you are believing things like that, and you think that the remedy is within the world, okay, that you will remain fearful because you will keep thinking that you're really in this world and that you're really a separate individual. However, as soon as you accept the remedy, you have abolished the fear because the real remedy is in the mind, is in choosing your right mind. And that's how the fear is abolished. He says this is how true healing occurs. That's it. That's how we heal. Paragraph 7 is telling us it is hard to recognize that thought and belief combine into a power surge that can literally move mountains. Okay, so he's trying to tell us here that all the power is in our mind. That's where it all is. And it's so powerful that it could literally move mountains. That's how powerful our thoughts and beliefs are. So he's telling us everything that we experience or we think we are experiencing are coming from our thoughts and beliefs. There's nobody out there. There is no world. There is nothing happening. Okay? And the only reason we think there's something happening is because we think it and we believe it. It appears at first glance that to believe such a power about yourself is arrogant. We might think, oh, I can't be that powerful. My thoughts and beliefs can't move mountains. One might think that that's arrogant to think that they have that much power. But Jesus is telling us that that's not true. And he's saying, but that is not the real reason you do not believe it. He's saying, oh, don't go and pretend that you don't want to think you're arrogant. He's saying, no, that's not even the real reason. He says, you prefer to believe that your thoughts cannot exert real influence because you are actually afraid of them. We're afraid of our thoughts. We are afraid of the ego thought system. We are afraid of how it makes us feel. So instead of understanding what's really happening here, we just keep running out of fear. And the running means projecting onto others. And that's what makes the illusory world go round. He says, if you believe that what you think is ineffectual, you may cease to be afraid of it, right? So if we know that the ego is nothing and that the world is nothing and there is nothing here and it's just a projection of our mind, then we don't need to be afraid of it. There are no idle thoughts. All thinking produces form at some level. So that's the last sentence in that section. And he wants us to know that our thoughts make everything in this world. And our thoughts are coming from our belief system. So it is our thoughts and our belief system that have made everything that appears to be in the world of form. And the way to have peace within you is to know that none of that is real, to completely deny and ignore the ego thought system, to not be afraid of it, to not give it power, to make it neutral, and then to give your thoughts and your belief over to spirit. And we are responsible for that, he tells us here. It is our responsibility to make that choice, to choose to give our mind to Jesus, to choose the Christ consciousness part of ourselves. That is our responsibility. And we can all do it. We all have the power to choose. We just have to make the choice. There is no such thing as time. So we get to choose again and again and again. Jesus tells us we're only procrastinating. We are all going to wake up. It's only how long it takes for us to do it. That's our choice. So you get to choose. How will you choose today?